Mark chapter 16, verses 9 through 20. And all that had been commanded them they told briefly to those around Peter. And afterward, Jesus himself sent out through them, from east to west, the sacred and imperishable proclamation of eternal salvation. So, Jesus sent them out. Being sent is what a disciple means. It's one who is sent. If you are a disciple, if you're following God, if you are disciplined, you are being sent by Jesus. It says from east to west. Once again, Mark is focusing that this isn't just the Messiah for the Jewish people. This is a Messiah for all people, creating a new covenant for everybody who believes to be part of. But why do we have two endings? Why is there the shorter ending and the longer ending? I think that's a really valid question, so we're going to unpack that for a little bit. So if we look at our historical documents, you'll see that we have four 7th to 9th century documents of Mark that only have the short version in it. They don't have the long version at all, which is interesting. And some people have actually wondered, is it possible that the original ending was lost? Because if we just end on verse 8, feel free to go back to the previous video and you'll see, if we just end there, it feels really abrupt, where Mary and Mary Magdalene are just nervous and afraid, the end. That doesn't feel like it's finished. So is it possible that the original ending was lost? I don't know. It's possible. The longer version, however, was accepted by the Council of Trent, which happened in around 1540, I think it was 1548 maybe. You can look it up. But it was accepted by the Council of Trent as canon, so that was decided by the Council of Bishops there. And you do hear of this longer version being mentioned by church fathers as early as the 2nd century. So while we don't have an original copy from that era, we do have church fathers talking about this ending in the Gospel of Mark. So that's interesting. One thing we know for sure is in the original language, it is definitely written in a different style. So it's probably not written by exactly the same author who wrote Mark. Perhaps it was written by some of his followers, and then they added it on. I don't know. It's possible. A lot of people say that about the Gospel of John, that it was written by his followers as well as in his style. And we do have here a summary of the things that happened with the resurrected Jesus. Is it possible that some of Mark's followers, after looking at the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, decided that some of those things needed to be added to make his story complete? I don't know. It's interesting. But let's have a look at that longer ending now. Now after he rose early on the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went out and told those who had been with him, while they were mourning and weeping. But when they heard that he was alive, and had been seen by her, they would not believe it. And after this he appeared in another form to 2 of them, as they were walking into the country. And they went back and told the rest, but they did not believe them. Later, he appeared to the 11 themselves as they were sitting at the table, and he upbraided them for their lack of faith and stubbornness, because they had not believed those who saw him after he had risen. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation. The one who believes and is baptized will be saved, but the one who does not believe will be condemned. And all these signs will accompany those who believe. By using my name they will cast out demons. They will speak in new tongues. They will pick up snakes in their hands, and if they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them. They will lay their hands on the sick, and they will recover." So then, the Lord Jesus, after he had spoken to them, was taken up into heaven and sat down at the right hand of God. And they went out and proclaimed the good news everywhere, while the Lord worked with them and confirmed the message by the signs that accompanied it. Okay, lots of things to unpack here, so let's have a look. So he first appears to Mary Magdalene. She was present at the crucifixion, she was present at his burial, and she is the first one to be part of his resurrection. She then goes and tells the others that he has been raised and that she's seen him, but they don't believe her. And remember, Peter and John are so excited by this news that they actually sprint to the tomb themselves. Of course, John was fastest. Then it says, after this he appeared in another form to 2 of them. Now you might think, well, that's going to be Peter and John, because they're the ones who ran to the tomb. But you're mistaken. Actually, you'll find the answer to who those 2 were if you look in the Gospel of Luke. I believe it's Luke chapter 24, I think it's around there. And so I would recommend you go and check that out. One of them is very famous, his name's Simon. The other one, not so famous. Let's see if you can find it. But it's in this story where they were on the road to somewhere called Emmaus. So it says here, they were walking into the country. They were heading towards a town called Emmaus, and that's where they met the risen Lord. But once again, They go tell the others, and the others don't believe it at all. Eventually, he does appear to them when they're having dinner. You'll see in the other gospel accounts that he actually walks through the wall, which is pretty impressive. And so he walks through the wall. They are amazed. Thomas has doubts, of course, and we hear about doubting Thomas, and so that's the famous thing that we have there. And then he gives them this commission. He says, "Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation." All the world, whole creation. Once again, Mark is at pains to make sure that we know this isn't just a Messiah for the Jewish people, but this is a new covenant for all people. In verse 16, it says, "The one who believes and is baptized will be saved." That's why baptism is such an important part of the Catholic tradition. Why do we have baptism at such a young age? Well, it's because here it says that it's a prerequisite for going to heaven. Do I know what happens if you don't get baptized? Do you not get to go to heaven? My gut tells me that's not true. However, I think it's still very wise to make sure that you do get baptized, just in case it is. And you will find various different priests, various different religious teachers will tell you conflicting answers to that question. But no one says if you're baptized, you're going to be damned. So you might as well. It's a good idea if you ask me. All right, and let's wrap it up. So then Jesus is taken up into heaven. You hear of the ascension into heaven. And then he's sat down at the right hand of God, which we see in the Nicene Creed. It says, well, lastly, of course, they went out and proclaimed the good news everywhere. They do as they're told. They go out and tell the whole world. In fact, St. Paul really goes for it, and he ends up going on many, many journeys all the way around the known world at the time. And that's where we get lots of Paul's letters, because he's writing to the churches that he used to be part of. And so he's writing back to them to give them advice, let them know a little bit more about what they should be doing, and really just spread the word across the world. Now, we come here to the end of our journey through the Gospel of Mark. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting. Obviously, I've only scratched the surface of what we could be talking about. But if I was to try and make content that describes all the things that Jesus did, and in the incredible depth in terms of knowledge of what Jesus was about, I don't think the whole of YouTube would be able to contain those contents. Bye for now.